Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome to the show today Miss Youngblood. She is a author, speaker, and transformational coach, but you approach things from more of a spiritual perspective. How are you doing today?
I am wonderful. How are you?
Doing wonderful, just living life, But, I wanted to really dive into the transformation aspects of your coaching. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Over the last, I'm going to say like 6 years, I've been in coaching, like either in it or actually doing it. And this past year, I did so much change in my life, or I went through so much change in my life that transformation kind of just like took a hold. Like, I have a lot of spiritual friends, and we always talk about like our zodiac signs and how that plays into a lot of things.
Mm.
And for a very, very, very long time, I've always been the person who's changed the most. Like, I've always been in a constant state of change, a constant state of transformation. Now, my best friend tells me it's because I'm a Scorpio. I say it's because life is hard and shit happens, right?
Oh my
so
God.
so for in real life, like I've just been on this journey over the last few years to really change what's going on in my life and change my perspective, not only of myself but of the people around me. So I think that transformation just really took a hold, and last year it kind of just like took off to a whole new level.
So, I I laughed when you said that it's really about life being hard because I think that all of us are constantly transforming, right? And if
Yep.
we look at it as it's less about the transformation and more about being adapted to the
Hmm.
transforming and accepting change. So,
Exactly.
is that something that you usually like help people with as far as transformation is concerned?
Yes, because I think one of the big things is the law of allowing, which I'm very sure that you're familiar with. It's like you have the law of attraction and then you have the law of allowing. And you can't really let things into your life if you keep resisting the change, the movement, the flow of how things are supposed to go. I should say supposed to go, but of how things will go, right? Because I mean, I'm sure like me, for instance, like when it comes to allowing, it is more of like letting go of that control and just kind of letting things go the way that they're supposed to. Now, this is not something that I've learned. Like I've known this for a long time, but didn't really learn it until recently, within the last couple of years. Because I think that every once in a while we try to resist, we want to fight back because we want the things that we want, and we kind of have to understand that sometimes it just isn't right for right now. Like,
Yeah.
that's not what we need right now. It's something that we want definitely in our futures, but right now it's not going to happen. And we have to understand that we can't control it to do so, because then that's how we kind of start putting blocks in our way. And it makes the journey longer to get
Right.
there.
Now how do you tune into that frequency and be like, tell the difference between the need and a want?
Is it, oh, I have such a great example for this. Such a great example. So I'm gonna tell on myself. So recently, within the last it hasn't even been 6 months, like 4 months.
Mm.
I really wanted, like, I started to realize that what I wanted in my life was like a really nice, wholesome, healthy relationship, right? And I thought that I found this person that could really change that. This was somebody who I'd met. They, I felt like I didn't have to change them. I felt like we were on the same path.
Mhm.
Well, then, because I got impatient, which happens when you've been going through your journey and things kind of they don't seem stagnant, but you're kind of just like, okay, I'm like anticipating the next move. Like, is this my next move?
Yeah.
I jumped into what I thought was my next move. And when I tell you that the blocks that I had built started to crumble, I was
Mm.
like, what is happening? And then I sat back with it. Luckily, it didn't take me long to sit back with it and go, that wasn't what I was supposed to be doing right then. Like I
Mhm,
jumped into the pool before it was ready for me to jump in.
mhm,
And of course, hindsight is always 2020. But when I realized that, I was like, okay, I probably should have waited to make that next move. We never know what it looks like. We never know what it sounds like. But after I did it, I could feel how wrong it was.
yeah. I feel
And
like for me though, that it's so difficult to get into that space, you know what I mean? Because it's like, because I go through the same thing all the time. And should I be doing that right now? Should I wait? And it is like the hindsight being 2020. Until you do it, you don't realize that it was wrong in some aspects. Because there are
no,
some times, to be
absolutely.
honest, where I'm just like, okay, maybe I shouldn't do this, but I really want to. So maybe that's what it is.
No, and I mean, and that's the thing. I always tell people like, do what you feel is right. Because when you get I think a lot of this has to do with like trusting your intuition and like
Mhm,
listening to yourself. Like I will tell you for a long time, like that little voice was like, hey, do these things. And I'm like, no, no, I'm scared. Like, we're not gonna do it. Like, we're not gonna do that. But then like now it's like when I feel something, when I hear something, when like something is like, you have to do this, I'm like, okay, how can I go ahead and jump on this now?
mhm,
Or whatever it is. And I can tell the difference. But like you said, when you first start like tuning into yourself and things like that, you do kind of question it. Like, is this my voice? Is this somebody else's voice? Is this, you kind of get into that space of like questioning what's going on. And in real life, I think that a lot of people just should go ahead and sometimes, like you said, like, we don't know if it's going to be right or not,
mhm.
but let's do it, you know?
Yeah. So when you teach people about the transformative aspects of their life, how do you teach someone to listen to their intuition?
So, first, it's really about trusting yourself. Like, I want to talk to them and really get to know like where they are in their life. Like, what has brought you to this point where you first feel that that something has to change in your life? And then what kind of transformation are you looking for?
Mhm,
Because I think that's really important. When it came to me, like last year, changing just a few habits to get the transformation that I have now, um I didn't like think about what the transformations were going, like what these changes were going to do per se. Like I was like, in the short term, like this is probably what I'm looking for. I'm looking for increased mood, I'm looking to not be a butthole to people, like, like I'm looking to be a better person. But how will these two small changes do that?
mhm,
And I think sometimes people don't trust themselves at the like when they're looking to make change. Some people don't trust themselves to be like, okay, if I make this change, then it really will change the trajectory of my life. They
mhm,
just think, well, what am I losing? And I think having that shift, because I mean, that's also a shift when it comes to like the law of allowance, is like, technically, you're not really losing anything.
mhm,
You're not losing anything that's meant for you. And I think that's really what it is. Like, if it's meant for you, it's meant for you, period.
mhm,
But I think that when people start to change their mindset around what they're gaining, I think that's when they can start listening to their intuition, when they'll start hearing that little voice or get that little gut feeling. Like, it's different for everybody, right? What does that little voice in the back of my mind saying right now?
mhm.
It takes a little bit of time, but helping them understand that, the changes that they're making are from within, then I think that really helps them to really understand, like, okay, like I can make these moves and not really have to, be too concerned with the outcome. I think that's really big.
Right. So I was thinking like when you talk about making moves, are these massive, massive changes? Because sometimes I think that's where the resistance comes from, because people think you have to change these massive aspects of yourself, but you don't. It's literally like these small incremental things.
Hmm. Yep. No, it's absolutely 100% small things. So, um, I'm actually writing a second book
Mm,
about transformation and the journey that I went through last year. And two changes that I made last year was I stopped drinking
mm,
alcohol and I started waking up earlier, like 6:30.
mm,
Now, I was one of those people who like get up at like 8 o'clock. I have to be at work at 8:15. Like I was like, I'm 15 minutes from work. Let me go ahead and just and
yep.
then run out the house, right? But I noticed that it was causing me more stress throughout my day to not have that time for myself. And I'm gonna hear a lot of people say, "Well, I don't want to get up at 6:30." That's fine.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to do what I did. But I knew for me, if I got up just a little bit earlier than what I was getting up to like really prepare for my day, I knew that the beginning of my day wasn't going to be stressful. So by the time I got home from work,
Mm,
I would be able to actually relax and not still have to think about work or anything like that.
mm,
It's just like when people decide that they're going on their health journey. Like one of the things I stopped doing was doing New Year's resolutions. I
mm,
don't think that people don't have to do them. I just think that I just personally stopped doing them because for me, it was like I'd set this goal and then a month in, I'd be like, all right, I'm done with that. Right.
mm,
But a lot of people set these goals. And what I started doing was doing a focus word. Let's do a focus word for the year and let's just focus on that. Like it's not changing much. It's really not changing anything. It's just really changing my language,
yeah.
right? So if you want to get healthy for the year and your focus word is consistency,
Mm,
choose what you're going to be consistent in. All right. Twice a week, I'm going to go meatless. I'm going to go meatless with my meals.
mm,
That small change, and that's 2 times a week. Like literally, you can do a Saturday or Sunday, like a Monday, Tuesday. Like you can make it so that you don't have to like it's a Tuesday, Friday. Like you don't have to stretch it out that far. But just like 2 consistent days. All right, we're going meatless,
mm,
and you will be surprised at what happens after a month of going meatless for 2 days.
yeah.
After 2 months of going meatless for 2 days. And again, like you said, it doesn't have to be a huge change. Like you can do that once a week.
Yeah.
You
No,
can
it's
walk
so crazy
minutes
because
once a week.
I pretty much started the same way. I went from um, anybody who knew me from back in the day when I was a soldier, we drank every
Mhm.
day back then.
Okay.
You know? And then like I grew into okay, I'm gonna cut it down to just a few times a week. Okay, now we're gonna cut it down to a few times a month. And now I drink so rarely. And
Mhm.
it is like the times when I do go out for a drink, I'm like, why did I do that? It's not it's one of those things where it's just like, I guess I was being social, but do I need that to be social?
Mhm.
So, so as we start pushing forward and trying to make these small incremental changes, it is so powerful and so important. And a lot of us do the exact same thing you're talking about, waking up a few minutes before we gotta be somewhere.
Mhm.
I'm so guilty of it, but it adds this extra layer of stress onto our lives,
Yeah.
you know? But I wanna dive more deeply into the books you were talking about. So this is your 2nd book.
Mhm. Yep.
So go ahead.
So my first book was about overcoming trauma,
Mm,
and it was specifically overcoming sexual trauma because that's where I started within my coaching realm. Um, and it was interesting because that book took me 6 years to write. It took me 6 years to write that book, and it was because the content was heavy. It was so heavy, and every time I would get into it, like I'd like feel like like completely drained from writing about my experience. And then I was like, all right. And then right before COVID hit, I had like a change of mind of like how I wanted this book to look because I
mm,
didn't want it to just be about my experience. I wanted people to actually be able to like take some steps with them and like use them to overcome their trauma.
mm,
So I did. I did all that, put that in the book, and then like right in the midst of COVID, I was like, well, I think I'm done editing this book. And my friends were just like, put the book out there. Like, it's probably not complete, it's probably not finished, but put it out there. And I was like,
mm,
cool, like, I'll go ahead and put it out there. So I put it out there, and people actually liked it. They first off, most people didn't know that I experienced sexual trauma, which is, how do you know that from looking at somebody? Like,
right.
oh, that person, like, no, we look like everyday people, right?
Mhm,
So once I did that and like wrote that book, I was like, all right, let's figure out where my life is going now. And then last year, I stopped drinking. First, it was for 90 days. And then, like, in the middle, after I stopped drinking for like 5 months, I was like, let's go the rest of the year. It'll be fine. And now, it's been a year and a month, like a year and 2 months. Like, I haven't, since I haven't drank. And in like August, I was talking to my best friend and I was like, I feel so misaligned with what I'm doing, like with my coaching, with everything. Like, I feel off. And we sat and talked about it. And she was asking me, like, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, my book, like, I really just want to like promote my book and like help people, get through trauma and this and that. And she was like, well, it sounds like you need to be writing a book. And I was like, sure, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Like, I didn't think that a second book was like in my peripheral. And then Labor Day weekend, I camped out in my backyard and took my laptop outside and was just like, we're gonna do Radio Silent Weekend. I'm gonna sit with my laptop. I'm going to start writing. And this book about self-discovery and what I went through after I just changed one thing, which was like drinking.
Mhm.
Um, you know, how that has really flowed into my life and what that looks like now. Like, it talks about, the first 90 days of me not drinking and how every 2 days I wanted to drink. Like, when you have such a powerful habit, like, my triggers drove my drinking.
Mhm.
And I think that a lot of times we don't see that, like what we are going through in our lives, the challenges that we have, the triggers that we have, how those things are driving the habits that we have to continue the stress, to continue the pain, to continue the guilt. Like, we don't realize that that's what's driving it.
Mhm.
So in my book, I talk about, how to figure out what those triggers are and really like hone in on stopping those triggers. And if you do have a trigger, creating a different habit or creating a different um, method of coping so that when you do get triggered, instead of reaching for the bottle, which is what I was doing,
Mhm.
I now reach for my pencils and start to draw. Or now I go for a run or something like that. And it's really, again, it's about changing that mindset so that you know that change is going to happen. It's inevitable. Like, look, if people are listening to this who are like my age, like, Blockbuster would have never thought that they'd go out of business because of Netflix. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they would have never thought that that was the trajectory of their business. But it happened. Just like with our lives, we don't think that, we're going to make these massive moves. But in reality, when you just change one thing, you can change everything that's happening in your life in a few weeks, like maybe even a few months. And I think that sometimes when we again like do these New Year's resolutions and we have these big goals, like, I want to lose 120 pounds this year, that's huge. Like, and it's completely doable, right? Like, people can do that. But it's like, what are we going to do to help make that happen?
Right.
Let's start with one thing. And I think that when people think of it, I remember there was a meme or a video once, where a person was talking to a kid, and they were telling the kid like all this stuff they have to do. And after the person stopped talking, the kid was like, "Well, that's only three things." Like, simplify the things that you're thinking about. Like, make it into smaller chunks, because that big goal that you're looking for is going to happen.
Mhm.
But as soon as we start stressing out about it and overthinking it, because I'm guilty of that too, like, as soon as we start doing all of those things, like, then we halt our process.
Mhm.
And it really does, it halts the flow, it halts our growth, it halts everything. And it's just like, let's not do that. Like, let's back it up just a little bit.
Wow. Well, all of that felt very divine. I'm like, okay, keep going. Tell me more about how I can do less to gain more.
Right. Right. And that's exactly what it is. I think, it's so funny. Like, I think about all of the people in my life who are like, I want to change this, like they come to me and they're like, oh, you're doing so great. Like, I want to be like you. And in the back of my mind, I'm just like, but you're supposed to be like you.
Mhm.
Like, I don't want you, like, I would love for you to make the same changes that I did. However, my changes are for me. Like, these aren't for anybody else. Like, I can go to anybody and say, like, I just did a video. Like I'm not telling you that you have to stop drinking.
Mhm.
I'm not telling you that that's the thing that you have to do. But there's something in your life that you have to stop doing or that you have to change that's going to put you on the path to where you want to go. Where if not drinking is your main goal,
Mhm.
you're going to find something that's going to go into the fact that you're not going to, but like that you're going to stop drinking now.
Mhm.
But it may not be right now. Like right now, you might need it, and that's okay.
Mhm.
I'm not going to tell you what you need in your life or how you have to change it. I'm going to be like, all right, what's going on in your life? Let's find that one thing that you can change, that you feel like you can even feel like it's the easiest thing to change. You're like, yes, I just want to brush my teeth every day. Like, let's do it. Let's brush those teeth. And some people may be like, Tay, how is that going to equate to them like not doing that big habit?
But it will.
It will.
It's so crazy because it will.
Like that's the consistency for me. Okay.
It
Like,
is. It's all about consistency is key, and it's more about teaching yourself the healthy habit of being consistent, so it doesn't actually
exactly.
matter. You could literally wake up every morning and say, "I'm gonna make my bed every day," and then watch how transformative that is. And then
Yep.
it's to the point where if you woke up and didn't make your bed, it's gonna bother you because you didn't do it.
Exactly. You're gonna drive back to your house, get out of your car, go into your bedroom, like make your bed, and then you're like, all right, I'm good. And then you're
Okay, yeah, forgot to do that. Sorry, guys. But we
like,
definitely
a
take
little
a
late
really
today.
quick commercial break. We'll be back in a sec. All right, well, welcome back, everyone. We were just talking about taking really small incremental changes that have massive, massive impacts on your life. So, one thing I really want to ask you about was when you wrote your first book, leading into the second book. So, talking about trauma, leading into what you're doing today. Do you feel that writing about the traumas in your life were so cathartic that it literally allows you to put it on paper and get out of you?
I do. So I'm glad that you asked this question because I was just talking to a friend about journaling.
Mm,
And one of the major things that I did last year, along with those changes, was I started journaling just about every day. And I realized that as I started to journal, like I tell them all the time, like I didn't have journal prompts. I didn't like do anything like that. Like I just wrote out how I felt that day.
mhm,
Sometimes it was 2 sentences, sometimes it was 40 pages. Like it just, it changed over the course of the year. But it really allowed me to like put what I was feeling into words. And then I was able to go back and look at it again and go, oh, well, maybe it really wasn't like this particular situation or
mhm,
trigger that made this happen or made me feel this way. Maybe it was XYZ. And I think that a lot of times, like, we hear about people who journal and how it's like a reflective tool, but sometimes because we don't know, we put too much pressure on ourselves for everything. And we think like, oh, the journal is supposed to be a certain way. And it's like, no, like I literally have entries in my journal where I was like, I don't feel like writing today. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Like, and it really is just like sometimes I have so much in my brain that I will just sit down and I will write. And that was the same way with my book when I first wrote it. Like one of the things that got me into really like writing my book and getting it done was I literally sat down one day. I was having a terrible day at work. And I came home and I was like, I really just want to write. And I sat down on my computer. I set a timer for 45 minutes and I was just like, I'm just going to type. And at first it was all surface level stuff like,
Mhm.
work was crappy. This person got on my nerves, da da da, right? But then after about like 5 to 10 minutes, all of a sudden, all of this other stuff started to pour out of me.
Mhm.
And it was like, how I felt ashamed and how I felt guilty and how I thought that the trauma was my fault. And like all of these things started to come out and things that I didn't even know
Mhm.
because this happened so long ago. Like this was this was in like 2017 that I wrote this. So this was many years ago that I wrote this. And being that happened when I was a kid, I was just like, wow, like there's a lot that comes out when you write, especially when you kind of like turn your brain off to it. Like you're kind of just like, I tell people all the time, like, if you're going to write in a journal, like, just start writing. Doesn't matter what you write, just start writing. And I was like, and then all of a sudden things will just start to come up that you didn't even know existed there. Like things from your subconscious will just start pouring out onto the paper or onto the keyboard. And you're like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
And I think by, putting it out into my book and writing about it, like that was probably one of the things that really helped me to like take that next step into transformation because
Mhm.
then it became like now I sit down and write. I'll write for like maybe a half an hour. Because I'm in the process of doing the editing, like adding more things and like making it spicy, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I will sit down and at first I'll be like, okay, I don't know what we're writing about, but I have my little topic and then I'll start typing
Mhm.
and then more will start just falling onto the page. And after I get done, I'm like, I should have wrote more. Or like there's more to be said here. Like, or I'll be like, all right, now I can go like relax in a bath
Mhm.
with my orange juice and sparkling water. Like, like it's just like
That's a good idea. Orange juice and sparkling water. I'll take that one.
queen of the mocktails over here. I'm just been doing it out. All right. But yeah, like it really, it's kind of like when you like go to a therapist or when you like go to your best friend's house and like you're dishing out all the tea, right? Just to like get rid of it. It really feels like that when I write, like every single time I write. And sometimes I just like, I think those days that I don't write a lot are the days that I kind of want to hold on to it just a little longer and really think about it and really feel the emotions behind it
Mhm.
because then a couple days later I'm like, okay, I'm ready to write about it
Yeah.
because I've had time to like reflect and feel and understand to a point because
Right.
sometimes things come up later and you're like, I didn't even think of that. And like within that moment I'm like, okay, I can write about this. And then after I write about it I'm like, that feels better. That
Yeah.
feels better.
It's exactly like that. Well, I wanna thank you so much, Tay, for coming on and, sharing your experiences and talking to us about transformative magic, honestly.
Yeah.
And I wanna thank everybody for tuning into this episode, and have a great one.